What's up, guys? John from Bennett's Customs. We're back on another episode, and we are working on the split window, which is kind of fun. But basically what we'd like to do is we need to get this mock-up radial motor out, and we are going to remove the original transmission that came with this car as well, and we are going to upgrade both these with this gorgeous piece of machinery. Yeah, it's a really cool thing. I mean, I'm very biased towards early hot rods and, you know, early motors and flatheads and stuff, but just the engineering and the style and just, they've really looked at every detail. And, you know, I love kind of those smaller, finer details, and they've really just nailed it out of the park on this one. These guys at Radial Motion have basically developed a 3-cylinder 2-liter, all aluminum, billet cranked radial motor designed for airboats, gyrocopters, cars. What we'd like to do is we need to get this mated to this, which has just arrived. So this is a Subaru transmission that has been reversed with a 4-1-to-1 gearing, I believe. This thing is really well built. This is from Todd at Subaru Gears. Is basically, we need to try and mate these two together. This is gonna be a little bit different one, but hopefully you guys enjoy it. Still lots of fabbing and you know, a lot of cardboard CAD design stuff probably gonna come up as well. So it's gonna be a pretty fun video. So let's get into it. All right, so what we did was we attached our new transmission to our mock-up motor, utilizing our Subaru Gears mid-plate, and then we attached the starter as well, and I've just got a few bolts kind of holding it together. Flywheel and all that stuff is not necessary at the moment. After a light try and install to see how close it's going to be, there's a lot of removing of material that we have to do within the suspension part of it, or not the actual cradle or cross member. Because we have this new transmission in there, we have to make some modifications in order to make it work. And I think with any motor install, they're all very much the same. You just have the area where the motor, etc. Luckily, there's a few sort of, you know, supplied plates from Subaru Gears that we might be able to use, or at least kind of use measurements off of them. This piece here, obviously this is sort of a mid plate for the back of the transmission. And if I can get it to sit in there, it actually will bolt straight through the transmission and into the adapter plate. Another piece of the puzzle that Todd had supplied with us is this sort of rear mount cradle as well. So this would have originally go up, and this bolts directly into a part that would be in a later model van. So the only thing that we have to worry about is where that suspension, those A-arms I'll call them, for the independent suspension, where they're mounted. So we're kind of limited as far as where we can get stuff, but as long as we can get the motor centered and placed where we're going to have that shifter to go through up to the front, we should be able to get a good reference of making up some really nice motor mounts and be able to create something in order to get this thing fitted. So let's continue. All right, so we've done multiple kind of in and out with the motor and transmission just to take as many measurements as possible to try and figure out the best way to make that engine cradle that we're trying to achieve. The first bit that I really want to try and make simple, but also quite rigid, and you know, obviously want to make it sort of kind of built more over the top than less. So I'm trying to take my four-wheel drive days of building stuff kind of into this to really make it heavy duty. What I've done is basically this whole rear section of the transmission is an aftermarket part that I mentioned from Subaru Gears, and this allows us to be able to get a shorter transmission and to be able to fit this overall thing in there with not a lot, like it's going to be really close, but this back section we kind of have an idea for anyways. Now that we've kind of have our little mounts where the arms meet, we need to try and make something because this transmission actually sits sort of in here. So got back on the old cardboard design, and I've sort of made a little thing that's actually going to sit up in here, and that's going to allow us to sort of weld right along the bottom of the torsion shaft itself, like the kind of cross shaft. And once that's sort of tacked into place, we then have two little mounts right on top that we'll be able to fix to our bushings and the little ears that we have for our mount for the transmission. And we weld that in. I'm going to make a piece that comes sort of vertical to it and weld along here, and then I'm just going to use two countersunk screws to bolt into that. So it's going to be welded, but at least it'll kind of pull all this in together as well, rather than welding to the cast bit of this. So that will be our transmission mount. So if you ever needed to remove the whole setup, it's just going to be two bolts here, and then the cradle setup, how we're going to design that, and then everything should just come out as one, as you see it sitting on the transmission stand right now. So I'm going to try and transfer this over to a piece of steel. We're going to do all the layout. We're kind of, you know, just coming up with an idea. We just want to make sure that it's obviously safe and structural. And then, you know, the heavier duty, the better. I can't even fucking speak right now.
You got me acting out. Tenderness is out the window. What you do to me when the cold bites blue is straight cool. Oh, it has to be you leaving writings on the wall. Promise me roses and a hungry haze, but now there's only kind you've ever dreamed. Don't wanna lay another night here. Don't wanna walk another mile. I just can't. Please don't make me do it. I got too much to lose. Too much to lose. Now lay me in the wilderness to dry up bits of your sweet caress. I can't weep no more. Willow trees have died and the last horn lark will fly. Got me feeling dusty. Got me feeling dusty. Please tell me it's a dream. Worst kind you've ever dreamed. Oh, I don't wanna lay another night. Don't wanna walk another mile. I just can't. Oh, please don't make me do it. 'Cause I
All right, so through the mess on the fab table, we took our little cardboard template, transferred it in to our bit that we're going to actually weld into the frame, and I just used some 5mm steel just to add a little bit of girth to it. So I've drilled these 2 holes on the outside. So a little bit of style and aesthetics, but also adds a little bit of strength in those areas. So now this is kind of what I'm trying to achieve. So just turn this so we can all see it. So that is how we're going to support the back of the transmission. So if we go over to, I'll pull these out. So once this is all welded in, this will get welded in just like that. We'll be able to do a nice stitch weld along here, along this side, weld everything in, and it's sort of like, you know, ties everything together. And then again, how I mentioned, we'll have a flat piece that'll go right here that'll make now. And that flat piece will have 2 holes drilled, and I can just countersunk straight into that, and it'll never move. Once those bolts are in there, I'll put Loctite on them, and they're never gonna come out because this will be fixed and welded in. Now, that'll be kind of the position and how we want it. That's gonna hold our transmission. Shifter will come out here. We'll work out how we're gonna get that down and through the original sort of linkage tunnel. And then we just need to start creating our rear cradle. But really like the way that looks. Ties it all in together really nicely, and should be pretty strong. All right, so now that our transmission mount is relatively done, it's kind of bolted in there and sort of mocked up, I want to start to work on the actual main mid-mount of the motor and transmission itself. I've come up with a few different ideas. I had mentioned I was going to use these flathead motor mounts, and I think I've found a simpler way. Unfortunately, I don't have them right now, but basically what we're going to try and use is a urethane style mount like this that you'd find for sort of like your 4-links, or yeah, I think this is actually a leaf spring one, but this is just an example. And this would basically slide into a bit of tubing, and then once in there, we can weld that to an end, and then this is essentially makes our motor mount. So what I'm thinking is we have to make some sort of cradle that goes up to both frame rails on each side that I will box, and we'll kind of make tabs that would kind of come off and fix to these here. And then we can kind of box it in, maybe add some dimple dies. But this was just a mock-up piece of Schedule 40 that I had used originally for a cross member for the race car. And it's just been sitting in the back. And so what I'm thinking is something similar to this sort of design. This is the Subaru gear plate that'll kind of come down and attach in certain areas along this, just to sort of capture the rigidity within this part here, and then the transmission will obviously mount to it there. So it'd be something like that, and then what we could do is have this, you know, kind of come up to here, and then this is going to be one big plate, and then we could add, you know, a couple dimple dies if need be. There is actually 2 parts where the exhaust comes out of both the heads of the radial motor, and I would like to measure the distance between those and make sure that there is 2 big dimple dies, just in case I need to sort of bring the exhaust through it if need be. So I'm trying to think a little bit ahead on my steps to make sure that once it's fitted in there and kind of connected to the motor, that you know, if there's any plumbing or anything needed to be done, there's access through it. I'm using some Speedway tubing. I believe it's 37 mil, 37.5 mil, 38 mil. I'm using 38 mil Speedway tubing. It's got a 3 mil wall, so it is relatively nice and thick. And then that way I can put it through my tube bender. We're gonna make a very similar shape to this, but slightly wider. And then we'll kind of start to make a cardboard template out of this piece. And then, yeah, once we get all that together, we'll weld it in. I've kind of have it loosely mocked up. I know that this is the width of my frame rails, and I'm just allowing a little bit of room in between for our bushing that would kind of sit on the top there. The main tip, I would say, when you're using this, if you are using something that has a seam, which this stuff does, is always put your seam to the inside, never on the outside, otherwise it will want to kind of collapse. The biggest thing too when you're using this is don't be afraid to use some grease. The grease will really help the tubing kind of pull through along those guides as well. And it just makes it, you know, you don't want anything to sort of hinder the capability of it bending, and then, you know, then you'll be left with like little kinks, or it'll start to flatten out. So you just want to make sure that it's got the most ease when bending it through. So just gonna pop this guy out. So you can see usually this will sit parallel to it, but because of sort of what we're working with, it doesn't, but that's okay. I can make do. I don't have the degree wheel anymore either. That got damaged. So we're just going by eyeball, which is not a bad thing. We were accurately able to get everything done for the race car, so we'll just be able to do it again. So this one you can see is still manual operated, and so you just use pipes to bend it, which totally works. Just over 90 degrees. All right, so as you can see, while we're doing it, I think there's just a little bit too much slack in this setup, and we've sort of have a dropped end down here, and it's about a 3-degree drop, so not ideal. Look how much that is. Clamp it to the table. Luckily this still has a fair amount of material on it, so we can sort of tweak it. Otherwise, if I have to, I'm happily able to just cut it in the center. All right, so we're able to just tweak it a little bit, and yeah, we nailed it. So I've obviously left a fair amount more room here because I don't exactly know where we're going to cut and weld our sleeve on to, per se, kind of, you know, this is sort of what we're trying to achieve, like that. If we go up into the car, get a bit of light down, it's gonna sit roughly about there. So right where our shock mounts are, we'll make something that'll kind of come off the frame rail, connect to our bushing, so I'll have our bolts right here, and then this is gonna sit down like that. Obviously it's not gonna sit this low either, but you get the idea, and then we'll have our little plate through here, transmission, motor will hang out here. What I'd like to do is just take a few measurements, get all of our centers, get this laid out, and then we'll start to make a little bit of a cardboard template. I'm really excited to eventually have a CNC table where we can just design all this, or Ben can, on CAD or Fusion 360, and then bang, we just hit play and it just cuts it out, dropping it all in. It'd be amazing. But until then, we will get the whole stock kit out and our angle grinders, and our handheld plasma torch, and we'll make it work. All right, so this is kind of what I've come up with. This is our mount that goes to the transmission, an adapter plate. And then I've kind of drawn a few circles out, and these circles are going to be hole sawed. So we got 2.5 inch one and 2 1 3/4 ones on either side. And then the lip or line second to it is our shape of our dimple. So these are kind of our dimple dies that we're going to use, and we'll use that one, and I believe this one too. And these are what we're going to use in the press after we cut them out. So I'm going to transfer this onto our sheet, and then we're going to cut it out. I may even try and use the plasma cutter with this, and then we can just go back afterwards and clean it all up rather than using the angle grinder. And then we'll hole saw, punch some dimple dies, and then see what it looks like. All right, so there we have it. Just ran through on the drill press very patiently and put our holes in. And now we're just gonna jump over again to the press and dimple die these. Then we're gonna lay it down on the table, notch a few little areas out, and then we're gonna get this, basically mocked up in place on that cross member, maybe a few tacks or even fully welded in. Hold it under there, make sure everything's gonna work properly. So let's go and dimple die, and then we may even just mock it up on the trans quickly to make sure that we are exactly where we want it to be, and then we can get everything fitted.
Well, life has nearly killed me, and my mind has put me on the edge. Life has nearly killed me, and my mind has put me on the edge. Though I can barely crawl, I've got to walk where these angels feed a tree.
Capacity. So you can see, obviously, it's dished it out a lot. So it's the distortion, obviously it's this way. So I found that if we stick it back in on a flat surface, so you can obviously see how much it needs to be sort of flattened out, we'll stick our lower guy on there and then throw this guy from the other press in, and then we'll go down on that.
Well, my cup is nearly empty. I got such a long, long way to go. My cup is nearly empty. Got such a long, long way to go.
Pull that off.
Got to lay down here and rest.
That out. And that is pretty damn straight. Very, very, very small amount of distortion through that. So there, we now have our mid plate with our dimple dies pressed into it, which looks really cool. It's obviously, you know, going 5 mils, pretty heavy duty, but so if I just pull this motor back a little bit, I'll show you. Put my leg under it. So this is gonna go up, and it's gonna mount like that. The tubing will come down, obviously, through here. We still got room for our axles once it's in place. We got access through here just in case, but I think we're still gonna have ample amount of room to deal with our exhaust, so that is a bonus. So if you can imagine, that's in there. And then we will stick this guy in. Something sort of like that. And then we'll cut these off because we've left it long enough so we can make sure we get the right height. And we left this material here just in case we kind of want to tie that into the top of the mounts themselves where the rubber bushings will go through. And then what I am thinking is sort of, I suppose, lose a little bit of weight, like I mentioned, is even if I left this bit, we could sort of cut this out here, cut a little bit out there, same here, like that, and do the same over there, and then this would get eliminated. We don't really need it, and then we can just weld on both sides a nice pass all the way around. And it should look pretty cool and obviously be very structural. So, well, yeah, I think what we're gonna do now is I'll make a little die, or maybe I can just find something that I can use with the plasma cutter and we can clamp it on there, and I'll just use the plasma and then we'll clean it up with the grinder again. And yeah, use the file to obviously smooth it out.
Long, long, long way to go. Yeah, my cup is nearly empty. I got such a long, 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 long way to go.
All right, so I've kind of put it back in the car a couple times just to get a few overall heights, and we were able to that's our excess material that I trimmed off, and I've just kind of cut close to where I'm gonna tube notch this using our hole saw. So the links that we're gonna use are from airride.com. They're coming from Melbourne, and they are a 50 mil outside diameter, 3-inch wide sleeve with a bushing and then a steel bushing inside, I believe, for a 5/8 bolt. So that's going to be really perfect in order to sort of make our motor mounts off that. So I'm kind of trying to, again, forward think of everything I can do so I can sort of get this cradle tacked to this or even fully welded to it. And then once those arrive next week, I can kind of fit them as well. So I've got my 51 mil hole saw on the end of this with our drill. And this is sort of a new, I think it's called like the module tube notcher kit. And this is from Heron Forbes. And we got this a while ago. And this is actually kind of the first time I've used it. And I've had several different tube notchers, more or less the cheaper versions of them. And this makes very easy work of it. Not to, fully gloat on a really good product, but just first shot, first go, like I was very impressed with how well it worked, especially just with a crappy old drill on the end of it. Usually I use a corded drill that's got obviously a bit more balls to it, but so now that they're notched and our cradle will sit in there, obviously the bushings, you can kind of get the idea what we're trying to do now. So obviously the metal sleeve will be welded to that, and then we can make our mounts come off this. There you have it. I just made kind of a little fixture on the table to hold it down square. And what I'm gonna do is I do have sort of like table clamps or fixture mounts that I'll drill a few holes when we go to finalize and weld this. And I'll be able to bolt it right down, and I can kind of have multiple clamps all the way around, so it's not too intrusive for me to use the TIG welder and have the filler rod in there. But you kind of get the idea of what we were trying to make. Obviously, this piece will get welded in once we get our pieces, and it will look something like that. So I was happy I left a little bit more material here so we can kind of get one big weld all the way around, so it's not just, just the one off the tubing. So it should fit nice and tight, which is good, but that is essentially a very heavy duty cradle that hopefully will end up holding quite a bit of weight. So we'll go and take it over, and I'll show you where this is going to go. So basically, I feel like I said basically a lot. Anyways, this is our Subaru transmission. Huh? And anyways, basically. Anyways. So this is our Subaru transmission. This is our adapter plate. This is our radial motor. And this is threaded inside here. And I believe I will run a longer bolt that will go all the way through and still put a nut on the back side. There's one way it goes in and one way it doesn't go in. So might be a little bit overkill, but I'd rather over-engineer it than under-engineer it. And I think like aesthetics, if you were to poke your head under, you know, this is sort of the jewel of the entire van. That was our whole idea with this, is that less is more. The interior's real simple, the paint job's super simple, you know, no flash wheels on it, just keeping everything sort of understated. And then this is obviously, you know, the focal point of where we want everyone to see. So we still have ample amount of room for our axles, which is great. Still holes in case we need to like run stuff through. You know, we can drill and tap this and add some tabs if we wanted, you know, part of the wiring harness loom to go through this or whatever. What I'm going to do is just roll this under so you can kind of get an idea of where this is going to go. So there you have it. We got our mid plate very close to being finished. Our transmission mount's done, you know, and with the two of these kind of getting it in there, I think we'll definitely, you know, on the roll to getting this in and mounted. Very pleased with the way the transmission came out from Todd at Subaru Gears as well. And it's going to be really cool to kind of finalize and bolt this to the new motor that is sitting in the box. And you know, just visually get to have a look at it and see it in the back of the van. So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed that video, and make sure you like, subscribe, hit notifications, and we will see you on next week's episode of Bennett's Customs. Enjoy.